Hey, Bobby Scott's just up the street. He's joining us right now on the John Fredericks Radio Network. A lot of swamp creatures running around. I love when the General Assembly starts in Richmond. Bobby Scott was there a long time ago. And you go to the lobbyists running around in their $5,000 Armani suits trying to get things done. It is quite the show when the General Assembly rolls in there, Richmond. But we're not there today. We're in D.C. We'll be in Richmond tomorrow at Bill Stanley's office. But right now we're in the swamp. And joining us now is Bobby Scott, a long-time contributor to the John Fredericks Radio Network. And also, Bobby Scott, I consider him a personal friend. He's my congressman. I'm very proud to have him as my congressman. And there's a lot of things that Bobby Scott and I agree on. It's an interesting relationship because we agree on the most important things that have come up in the past 20 years, like getting out of these wars, not getting into them, things of that nature. So a lot of things here. But he's joining us now. Congressman Bobby Scott, 3rd District, Virginia, Democrat. Congressman, now you got elected chairman, and who's your ranking member?
Virginia Fox, the former chairman, will now serve as the ranking member on the Republican side. And we've agreed to continue to work together in a dignified fashion. So you won't be seeing a whole lot of headlines of people yelling and screaming at each other like you see on some of the other committees. We'll try to address our issues in a Virginian way. And we're going to agree and disagree, but we're not going to be disagreeable. And we're going to try to get better education, higher wages, better workplace safety, reduce health care. There are a lot of things within the jurisdiction of the Education Labor Committee, and a lot of them are going to be controversial, but we're going to go about our work in a dignified way. We have, a couple of years ago, we passed the Every Student Succeeds Act, and we need to see how that's working, whether or not there are any changes that need to be made. We have the Higher Education Act coming up. That's Pell Grant, student loans, and job training. So we have a lot of work. We have a lot of work to do.
All right. So if I were to ask, what is your top 2 priorities 2019 as the new chairman of the Education Labor Committee? 2 top priorities you want to get done, you want to get out of that committee. What would they be, Congressman?
Well, one is increased wages. Probably the minimum wage bill will be high on that list. Higher Education Act will be a high priority, but it's going to take a little time. Child Abuse and Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, is one I think we're going to have bipartisan support on, so we want to do that early. There are a lot of civil rights issues that we're going to have to deal with. And there's one pressing issue, what they call multi-employer pensions. They're huge pension funds that are on the brink of becoming insolvent. If they go broke, you'll have hundreds of thousands of people losing their pensions. And the things we can do, actually, if you look at the reduced taxes people will pay if they lose their pensions, the increased federal expenditures for food benefits and Medicaid. If you look at what it's going to cost the federal government to have these go over, really the stupidest thing on the table is doing nothing. There are things we can do that can avoid the collapse of these pensions and avoid businesses going broke and people losing their pensions, and we can get out of it cheaper than if we just let nature take its course and have these plans fail. So we're going to try to come together and do the right thing and address the problem of the multi-employer pensions and a lot of the single-employer pensions, regular pensions, and a lot of government pensions are not as solvent as they need to be. And so we're going to have a look at long-term pension plans.
Congressman, what is your relationship? How would you describe your relationship with Leader Nancy Pelosi?
Well, we get along. She's a Democratic leader. I think we have a good working relationship.
Okay. I want to get to the shutdown. The president walking out of a meeting yesterday, very upset, saying there's no negotiation. Let me just ask you something. We ran a montage earlier in the show with Chuck Schumer, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, all your Democratic friends through the years advocating money for a fence, money for security, money for some kind of a barrier, millions of dollars they spent on it. I ran 8 clips, all of them saying it. Now because Trump is saying it, he can't get $5 billion for some sort of a barrier, which many of your leaders voted for consistently before Trump was president, during Obama, during Clinton, and Bush. So why not compromise here? Why not offer him $3 billion, get something in return, and open the government? Why the obstinance?
You're talking $5.7 billion. That is not the price of the wall. That's the down payment on the wall. The GAO says that we have not adequately estimated the cost of the proposal, which could be $30 to $70 billion. And so when you talk about spending money, you really ought to be talking about a plan that we don't know what it's going to cost, but it could cost $30 to $70 billion. All of the evidence we've seen has shown that the wall is not the most effective way to have border security. People say the wall is security. No, there's security initiatives, and you have the wall, which most experts say is a waste of money. Now, General Kelly, who used to be head of Homeland Security and recently left as chief of staff, said a few weeks ago that early in the administration they dismissed the idea of a concrete wall. Well, it'd be interesting to know why he said that, why they dismissed it. What was it about the wall that didn't make any sense? But the debate should not even be taking place while the government is shut down. I mean, you can't have a rational discussion with somebody that says, give me $5.7 billion, or I'm going to shut the government down. That's not a debate. That's not a discussion. Let's reopen the government, reopen all the parts of government, maybe except Homeland Security, and then have a intelligent discussion, looking at evidence. The statement that the president made the other night included some statements that were just clearly misleading. He went into great length as to how many people were dying as a result of drugs. He didn't say that the opioid crisis, you get the drugs from the drugstore or your doctor's office. That's not coming across the border.
That doesn't have anything to do with the argument. But
Congressman,
that's got nothing to do with this argument.
To say you're going to cure all these deaths with a wall is just misleading. And so let's have an intelligent discussion. Let's first reopen the government.
He's not going to do that.
Have an intelligent discussion.
He's not going to do that. So he's not going to do one thing. Pelosi's not going to do the other thing. Schumer's not going to do it. So we're just stuck here. But look, I was with the president the other day. We're in a private briefing, and he said that he's willing to negotiate. So negotiate. Well, to me, negotiate means you sit down in a meeting, and somebody gets one thing and somebody gets something else, and then you reopen the government and you go from there. He's not stuck on $5.7 billion.
No. If you're going to negotiate, you first reopen the government, and then you.
Well, then you're not. He's not going to do that.
You can't have an intelligent discussion when one side comes in saying, "I'm going to shut the government down unless you agree to this," and if you don't agree to it, that's where we are now. And it doesn't. It really doesn't matter what the issue is. If you give in to that kind of tantrum.
It's not a tantrum. That's a talking point, Congressman.
To be the same thing. My way, we're going to shut the government down. Well, okay, shut it down. I mean, we can't capitulate to that kind of bullying, that kind of tantrum. Let's reopen the government like we have some sense. And the bills that are passed, the bills that are now in the Senate and going to the Senate, are all bills that have virtually unanimous Republican support. Bills that have passed either a Republican committee or a Republican House or a Republican Senate with virtual unanimous Republican support. Now, if they would vote the way they voted before, you talked about what Democrats have said in the past, if they would vote the way they voted before, you'll have veto override majorities in both the House and the Senate to reopen the government.
You know, look, you just said there's no compromise. And by the way, you've got all your talking points, the Chuck Schumer talking points down about tantrums and whatever. So I'll give you that. But look, he goes to Pelosi, who says no money for the wall or a barrier, not a dime. Well, that's the other side of the coin. I mean, when you say, well, he's not going to reopen the government, therefore he's obstinate, and then your speaker says no, not a dime. There's no compromise there. If you guys just came to the table and split the difference, I mean, you got a $4 trillion budget, and we're arguing over
program. He's asking for a down payment. Well, let's reduce the down payment. You still are looking at a total waste of money. He hasn't said where the money's coming from.
No, well, the money's coming from your $4 trillion budget. It's coming from your $4 trillion budget.
The Homeland Security Department that can make way for $30 to $70 billion.
It's not $30 to $70 billion. He's asking for 5.7, and you could probably get by with 3.
That's a down payment because we don't know what he's going to spend it on. And you start a project, and he wants to start the wall, and the total cost. The GAO has estimated 30, and others have estimated 30 to $70 billion.
Congressman, are you going to tell me that the barrier, the steel wall in Tijuana has not been effective? Otherwise, San Diego would be flooded with these 5,000 migrants. So the only reason John, they stopped them is because of that barrier.
Government open. If you're going to prevail, you're going to prevail on the merits, not prevail because you're willing to shut down the government to get your way.
So if he opened the government, are you willing to go and negotiate with him?
Sit down and look at the facts. And when
are you willing to negotiate?
Something like people are dying because of drugs, and therefore we need the wall, you'd be able to point out that the wall will not stop people from coming. Sarah Huckabee Sanders got caught on Fox News the other day saying that 4,000 terrorists have been caught trying to get in. And Chris Wallace said, yeah, I heard that number, and out of the 4,000, 3,900 and some got caught in airports. The wall
are you for open borders?
I mean, you come up with these scare tactics and fear-mongering, and if we have an intelligent discussion, we can see who's telling the truth and have a discussion, and then we can move forward. We're not going to have an intelligent discussion if the one side comes in. Here's what I want. If I don't get it, I'm going to shut down the government, and then shut down the government. I believe in a few days we're going to reopen the government on a veto override majority in both the House and the Senate.
Are you for open
there are a lot of Republicans that are saying that this is ridiculous. We need to reopen the government. We can have a discussion. There's no reason why people can't get the tax refunds because we haven't agreed on the Homeland Security budget.
The president's already said he's funded
why
that.
Can't get inspected. There's no reason why the TSA is working with it. And I don't know how these people, anybody expects people to go to work and not get paid. I mean, I don't know. Their lawsuits that we just heard on your news, that their lawsuits pending. I don't see how a judge can order somebody to go to work without getting paid. If you're declared essential and you got to go to work, well, you got to get paid.
All right, so Congressman, I get the argument for opening the government. Nobody's in favor of being closed. And if anybody listened to my show leading up to this, I said this would be a disaster and it was the wrong way to go. But here we are. It is what it is. We both have to deal with it. So let me just ask you this. Let's say the government opens. Are you for open borders or do you want a rational policy that people just can't walk in? Which do you want?
I'm for significantly more money for border security, money that would be spent effectively to increase the security at the border. All of the experts have told us, and I've got on my Twitter account, I've tweeted out a couple. People can look at Bobby Scott on Twitter and see several articles, and we're going to be putting out more that explain why this down payment for the wall is not an effective use of government money. But we can have that debate with the government open. We don't, and I think that the argument that the wall is a waste of money, just like General Kelly said that we dismissed the idea of a wall early in the administration. And if it was such a good idea, the president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House would have passed it a long time ago.
Yeah, that's your best argument right there.
It wasn't a big priority worth shutting down the government over when he apparently had the votes in the House and the Senate.
Sure. No, he never had them because
now all of a sudden,
you're right.
Rush Limbaugh questions his strength, and he's going to shut down the government unless he gets his way. Let's have a rational discussion, sitting down, working it out with facts, going back and forth, and we can come up with a budget. Now, I can tell you, if you take $5.7 billion out of the Homeland Security budget, it's got to come from somewhere. We don't have $5.7 billion.
Congressman, you got. Come on. I love you to death. You guys are running a $22 trillion national deficit, national debt. You got a $4.4 trillion budget, and we're fighting about.
Don't accuse me of that.
And we're fighting about
budgets I voted for would have balanced the budget. We'd still be in surplus.
I know that. Look, I don't lump you. You're lumped in. You're lumped in with everybody.
What?
Look, first of all, I don't think it was Limbaugh that got him all fired up, Congressman. I thought that was me. So that's just one clarification.
Okay.
The second is
you Limbaugh and Laura Ingraham. But we ought to be able to have an intelligent discussion. I don't think there's any question, and the Democratic caucus would insist that our leadership sit down and negotiate and go back and forth with facts, not make up stuff, not fear-mongering with exaggerations, but with facts, listening from experts and what actually works and what doesn't work, and what kind of budget we can spend on Homeland Security that will give us protection on the border. We can do that. But you're not going to have an intelligent discussion if somebody comes in and says, if I don't get my way, I'm going to shut down the government. You haven't given me what I want, the government stays shut down. If you want to know the way out of it, I think the House and Senate will pass bills to open the government, send them to the president. If he vetoes them, I think they'll override those vetoes. We could reserve Homeland Security, open up Homeland Security, for 30 days, which would require us to keep negotiating and come up with, have hearings and hear from experts and come up with a budget while the government is open that makes sense. But you're just not going to have anything intelligent going on when one side decides my way or the highway and then shuts the government down. Now, the other side cannot capitulate. Because once they shut the government down on the table, either they'll get their way all the time, or you just got to let the government get shut down. And when I say all the time, they're going to come up the next budget. Here's what I'm going to get, and if you don't give it to me, I'm going to shut the government down. Well, if you're scared of government shutting down, you might as well not be part of the process. So let's reopen the government. Okay. We can do that. There are bills that. And these are Republican bills. I mean, there's stuff that Democrats have, we believe we can get in the legislation if we had time to negotiate. There are nice little initiatives that Democrats would like that we believe we can get into a final version. We have skipped all that. We've just taken the Republican passed bills from last year, put them on the table, and passed them. I don't know what, and that's how you open the government. Because the Republicans vote for it like they did last year, you'll have a veto override majority.
Well, if the Democrats voted for the barrier the way they did in the past, we wouldn't be in this situation. So, look, there's two sides of this argument, and you're taking the position that
one side comes in and says, "I get my way, or shut the government down."
No, Pelosi's saying the same thing. Your speaker's saying the same thing. She's saying not a dime.
Let's reopen the government, and then have an intelligent discussion like adults. Let's not have one side come in and says, "This is what I'm gonna get. If I don't, I'm gonna shut the government down." That's not negotiation. That's not a discussion. That's not even intelligent.
I believe your sincerity. I know you a long time. We're friends. I love you to death. You're my congressman, and I believe you, right? So I believe what you're saying, that you went this way, that Bobby Scott, Congressman, Mr. Chairman, 3rd District, Virginia, would be willing to have a rational discussion. I believe that. But I don't think a majority in your caucus share that view. So the fear of people that are immigration hawks like me that want to see a secure border are afraid that this will go nowhere. And then on the 29th day of the Homeland Security, we're back to the same thing. I mean, so it's not, it's, I mean, if you were the speaker, I'd be in favor of it.
Except that people are getting paid.
All right. You and I have been opposed to the intervention in Syria for, I don't know, the whole time. Now we're pulling out of it. I thought the Democratic Party was like the party of peace and non-intervention. Now all of a sudden, they're siding with the neocons and warmongers and John Bolton.
If you're going to pull out you ought to have a plan. The president just announced we're getting out, no plan. It was so bizarre that the Secretary of Defense quit on the spot. His national security advisor, Mr. Bolton.
Good. I'm glad he quit. I'm glad he quit.
Okay, well, Mr. Bolton is saying,
I'm glad he quit.
We're getting out right now. What he meant was we're going to get out when this is in place and that's in place, and we'll have an intelligent withdrawal strategy. Well, you just can't come out in a lurch and leave all your allies wondering what in the world is going on. You have to have an intelligent plan to come out. Now, I would hope that they come up with a plan to withdraw. We don't want to stay there forever, but we can't leave our allies all wondering whether or not we're a reliable ally or not. You can't leave the situation worse because we just abruptly left. Let's have an intelligent withdrawal strategy, focus on coming out, but have it well thought out and intelligent, and not one that provokes the reaction we're getting from our allies that are questioning whether we can be relied on. And a lot of people.
If Hillary Clinton, if Hillary Clinton was president, look, this is Trump derangement syndrome, Congressman. Let's just get the hell out of there. I mean, he said we're going to get out. You and I have been arguing for him to get ever. Of course, we'll have a plan, and he's not going to telegraph that. He's already said that.
He made the announcement he made. That's why that's why all of our allies.
Well, now he's forcing.
Now wondering what in the world is going on, and why the Secretary of Defense, that apparently you didn't like anyway, but he just abruptly quit.
I don't like him anyway. I'm glad he's out. Not a moment too soon. Look, this is the warmongers and the neocons, their attack back. What the president's done is he's made everybody figure out a withdrawal strategy. That's what he's made everybody do. If he hadn't said this, we'd have been there in Syria in perpetuity, just like we're in Afghanistan in perpetuity. Now, I got to go, but let me tell
withdrawal strategy. You've got a lot of support for coming out of Syria with an intelligent withdrawal strategy that doesn't leave a total mess behind. You'll have a lot of support for a withdrawal strategy, but an announcement that we're coming out right now is not an intelligent withdrawal strategy.
He's forced the hand of the warmongers and neocons running around the government that are wedded to the money coming from the military-industrial complex that supplies all these wars. He's following through on a campaign promise, and he's making State Department of Government and everybody else figure out how to get us the hell out of there, and I commend him for that. Now, I got to go, but I just want to tell my audience... Okay, I got to tell my audience all the things we agree on because we just had a debate here for 30 minutes. Okay, number one, Bobby Scott voted against all these wars. I was with him on that. Number two, Bobby Scott, only person, one of the only people in Congress to have the courage to vote against Patriot Act, son of Patriot Act. Bobby Scott fighting for justice reform for 30 plus years since he's been there. So am I. Bobby Scott against private jails. So am I. Bobby Scott opposed to no-knock warrants. So am I. Bobby Scott said there were no WMDs in Iraq. There were not. So did I. Bobby Scott didn't want to cut taxes and start wars to add to the deficit. So was I. Bobby Scott was against NAFTA before anybody knew what it was, and he fought against TPP. These are all the things that we agree on, and now we're agreeing to get out of Syria. So there you go, Congressman. There's so much that we agree on. Let's get the government open, give us the opportunity to get this barrier done, and there'll be another thing that we can agree on. How about that?
Let's do border security. Let's discuss what that means, and then we can agree. But the first thing, we got to reopen the government.
All right, I got to go. Congressman Bobby Scott, my Congressman, 3rd District, Virginia. Thanks for, as always, being on every week and the lively discussion we have. Chairman of the Education and Labor Committee.